For us, it's a daily thing.
It's every day, right?
This is Mammoth Daily
We're going to take you inside the locker room
with Mike Fulta.
We want this show to be about the fans, and we want this show to be driven by our Utah Mammoth community.
And Adrian Denny.
Fans can submit what they want to hear us talk about, what they want to hear Utah weigh in on. It's all going to be here.
Here's Mike and AD with you.
Utahns, countrymen, lend me your ears.
Right here on Mammoth Daily.
Good morning and welcome to your Tuesday Mailbag edition of Mammoth Daily. Mike Fulta and Adrian Denny here with you. We're your Hockey Night in Utah radio broadcast crew. Mammoth taking on the Colorado Avalanche tomorrow at the Delta Center as we finally get back to work after a three-week Olympic hiatus. Adrian, going to make it a bit of a little back to school here because we've been off so long and it feels weird. You're going to practice. It feels like training camp, not like normal in-season practices. But what are you kind of maybe most looking forward to, most anxious to see as we come out of this hibernation back into our regular slate?
How are we going to reset the forwards with Alexander Kerfoot and Logan Cooley come back? They're going to get their spots back, and the Mammoth have had some guys that have played really well. We've seen in practices the last couple days how it looks like things are going to go, but Mike, we've talked about it, long anticipating Logan Cooley coming back, last played on December 5th. Alexander Kerfoot, only 9 games. Those guys are so big. Special teams, the faceoff dot. The Mammoth are going to have 6 centermen out of their 12 forwards out there. The faceoff circle was a struggle at the beginning of the year. Barrett Hayton wasn't playing the first couple games. Alexander Kerfoot wasn't there. Cooley in his second year playing the toughest position in the NHL, making his third year overall as a 21-year-old. So I think you add those guys back, and those are just 2 little areas that I think can really help by just them coming back and adding to the lineup. Face-off circle, going from 4 centermen to 6 centermen with the addition of Nick Schmaltz to that position in the last month and a half. Penalty kill. You put Kerfoot on the penalty kill. You're a guy better there. Cooley going back in a power play situation. That's another player that can add to those little areas. Things tighten up. Last 25 games of the year, last 2 months, you're going to have more 1-goal games. The face-off dot, the special teams, going to be areas that make differences in those games for the Mammoth. So you add those guys back. And Mike, as we went into that break, it seems like forever ago, but let's not forget how great Kyler Yamamoto was playing after he got reinserted into the lineup against the Nashville Predators on January 24th. 8 points in his last 7 games going into the break. How about Barrett Hayton? 9 points in his last 11 games going into the break. That's a guy with at least 19 goals in 2 of the last 3 seasons. 19 goals when he's healthy out there. 5-game scoring streak that he brings back from the Olympic break. JJ Peterka had some really nice moments. 4 points in his last 4 with a couple of goals. 5 goals in his last 13 and 9 points. And Mike comes back to Clayton Keller. In his last 22 games, he had multiple points in 10 of those contests. He's got a team-leading 18 multiple-point games on the season. Nick Schmaltz, the career year that he's having, when him and Keller score in a game, the Mammoth are combined 25 and 3. So those are just some notes that I jotted down. I know how you feel about that.
Of course they have a winning record. It's because they scored. It's like everybody has a winning record when they score because it helps the team. I don't
25 and 3 are the combined records when Keller and Schmaltz
all right.
score, Mike. So those are just some of the storylines, some of the notes that I jotted down, getting ready to go back to game action coming up tomorrow against the Avs.
Do you feel as we go back through things, just we've been off for so long, and the guys have been skating for a while, but we as broadcasters haven't called.
We
a game
haven't been
weeks.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've been in different countries, different time zones. Yeah, exactly. That's fair. I deserve that. But do you feel like have you had to reacquaint yourself with just the story of the season as like you get ready for these shows and we kind of get ready to go to practice? Because looking back over the schedule, I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, I totally forgot about that game, or I totally forgot that Kyler Yamamoto had 2 goals in back-to-back games. Is it the same thing for you?
Yeah, no, it felt new. Like me, Mike, and my spreadsheets and the individual stats and numbers that I keep, like player records when they score goals, and then I can add them together just like that and give you a number of 25 and 3. But I was going through some of those things like, I don't it's a little foggier than I thought it would be. Hey, Mike, the big thing I remember, the important stuff, beating Vancouver and Detroit by combined scores of 11-3 going into that break, jumping out early on, leading for over 55 minutes in both of those games, and just the way the Mammoth went in to that Olympic break with a couple of really nice wins to put an exclamation point really on that nice stretch that they had starting January 5th at Madison Square Garden and kind of carrying through that Nashville game. Then, the big win against Florida, but lost to Carolina, lost to Dallas, and then won those 2 games to solidify that first wild card spot going into the Olympic break.
Might want to check the spreadsheet. If my math serves me, it's 10-3. Those last 2, 6-2 over Van, 4-1 over the Red Wings.
That's not the spreadsheet, Mike. That's arithmetic. that is not an Excel formula. That is what the kids are doing over in kindergarten over there.
Would you ever get nervous before like a first day of school or going back to school?
I don't think so. I think I was always pretty excited.
Yeah.
When I was in 3rd grade, we moved from Oregon to Utah, and my first day at the new school was like random day in the middle of November. That was a pretty scary, nervous. Transition. That was hard. Outside of that, I think I was pretty much guns a-blazing, ready to go to school on the first day with a slick new outfit, maybe a new backpack, maybe a new kind of Lunchable that had been put in the supermarket over the summer that I was going to try out with one of those chocolate mints that they put in them. But yeah, I was always pretty excited. The transition though, when I got traded, Mike, from Portland to Salt Lake as a 3rd grader. Yeah, that was that was a transition.
Well, you didn't have a training camp. You just had to jump right in. Everybody else is full speed.
Yeah, that's it. On a random Monday in November.
That'd
the good
hard.
news was I think it was Thanksgiving week, so it was just 3 days, and holy smokes.
Oh, I feel bad for 3rd grade Adrian. Glad that you turned out okay. I would have trouble sleeping the day before we went back to school. Like excitement, nerves, I don't know what it was. I would have trouble sleeping always. I remember that. But it is a back to school for us tomorrow against the Avalanche, and I did want to make sure everybody had their school supplies and the correct materials before we go back to the classroom. So, AD, I'm just going to run through kind of the outlook, the forward-looking outlook for the Utah Mammoth, the trends, the team trends that we had kind of going into the Olympic break. You already hit on some of the players, so I can hit that. But I'm just going to kind of hit what's ahead of us and then what was behind us to get us to where we are as a bit of a reset. So right now, if you haven't looked at the standings in a month, we don't blame you. Mammoth, first wild card spot in the Western Conference. They're 1 point ahead of the Anaheim Ducks, who are in wild card 2. 25 games left. in the regular season. Interesting here, the Mammoth have the 6th easiest schedule remaining of all the NHL teams. That's just based on like strength of schedule and or points percentage, I should say, of teams that Utah has left. Doesn't really mean much because the differences between the 6th easiest and the 6th hardest is just a few percentage points. But something of note, Mammoth have already played a lot of really good teams. No real chance for the Mammoth to catch Dallas in 3rd place in the division. They're 13 points up right now. That would take a colossal collapse by the Stars and a huge surge for the Mammoth to get anything better than a wild card spot. If you forgot, I'll remind you because it's going to be a big factor this week. 3 of the top 5 teams in the NHL reside in the Central Division: Colorado, Minnesota, and Dallas. Minnesota and Dallas have been flip-flopping, but those are 3 of the best teams in the league. Then the schedule coming up ahead for this week, kind of this next stretch for Utah. You've got 3 games at home: Colorado Wednesday, Minnesota Friday, and then Chicago on Sunday before 5 games back on the road. So that's kind of the look ahead as we move into March for the Utah Mammoth. So that's the look ahead. AD, I'm going to kind of take a quick look back as to where, how we got here. Mammoth won their last 2. You mentioned the combined 11 goals allegedly against Vancouver and Detroit. Mammoth have won 7 of their last 10. Had a tough
10 goals. 10 goals.
No, I know. I'm just
Oh, just I get it.
I'm using my notes are from Adrian's spreadsheet, so forgive the numbers. But Utah had a really challenging 4-game road trip before we went to break. They won in Nashville. We got the heck out of Dodge and flew to Tampa, where we got shut out by Andrei Vasilevsky in a really good game. You beat the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, but then at the end of the road trip, you had a 2-goal lead against Carolina, blew that game in regulation, a really hard loss, before the Mammoth came back home. They lost close to a very good Dallas team and then had those 2 wins against Vancouver and Detroit. So the offense has been hot recently, 4 goals or more in 4 of Utah's last 5 games and in 7 of the last 9. Special teams has been one of the struggles heading into the Olympic break from January until the Olympic break. So basically all of 2026 that we've seen so far. Mammoth have had the 5th worst power play in that stretch and the 9th worst penalty kill in that stretch. So 2 areas where we're really hoping improve with some of those lineup additions, getting Cooley and Kerfoot back from injury. AD, do you feel ready to go back to school now? Do you have your school supplies and your syllabus? Is there anything else that I've left out?
Yeah, I'm ready, Mike, and I'm ready for the special teams to take the final 2 games before the break and push it into the next 25. Because against Detroit, against Vancouver, couple power play goals, 2 for 5, 6 for 7 on the penalty kill. It looked good. It felt good. Not just the numbers, but what we saw on the power play and the penalty kill against the Canucks and Red Wings. And Mike, you come out with Colorado. We talked on yesterday's show, not exactly sure who's going to be in the lineup for them in terms of their heavy hitters, but have played 3 1-goal games against the Avs to start the year. And then you go into a stretch. You got 9 straight games, again, Mike, historically speaking, which for Utah is over a 2-year span. You've got Minnesota. You've won 4 straight games against them. Never played them with Quinn Hughes before.
Yeah.
You got Chicago, a team that you went unbeaten in regulation against last year, lost first game of the year this year. Washington, only played them twice, beat them in a shootout over a year ago. It's the last time you played them, but winning records against Philly, Columbus, you play Chicago again, Minnesota, Chicago again. You got the Hawks 3 times in about a 2-week stretch there. Pittsburgh, and then you go into Dallas, Vegas, 2 teams you've played pretty good against. Lost to Dallas last time out, beat them the time before, beat Vegas last time you played them. And then, Mike, you go into an Anaheim, LA, Edmonton 3-game stretch against 3 teams that either haven't beaten this year or you've never beaten them. So that's how the schedule looks for Utah here going into March. A lot of Chicago Blackhawks, Mike. 3 games against the Hawks. A team that was in the playoff picture, really going into mid-December, hit some bumps in the road. We'll see what we get from them if they're selling, but some opportunity there for the Mammoth when you look at the schedule and teams that they've played pretty well against.
Beware. Do you remember Buddy Robinson and his famous goal, Adrian? Buddy Robinson was a guy that I could say worked with in Rockford in the AHL. He got called up to the Chicago Blackhawks at the end of the year. This was in 2023. Was it 2023? It had to have been 2023. And he was playing for the Blackhawks as an AHL call up. Basically, that was kind of most of his career, and he scored a goal, a seemingly random goal against the Pittsburgh Penguins. That proved to be the game-winning goal in a game that people thought was kind of worthless. Blackhawks didn't have anything to play for. It wasn't worthless for Pittsburgh. And I was trying to look this up as I was talking. I might get this wrong, but I believe it knocked Pittsburgh out of the playoffs, and instead the Florida Panthers got into the playoffs as the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. And the Panthers went on to beat the record-setting Boston Bruins in the first round that year. And none of that would have happened had Buddy Robinson not scored a goal for the lowly Chicago Blackhawks against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So all of that to say, beware of teams who are out of the race and are calling guys up or might have younger guys in, teams that maybe they signal that they're selling at the trade deadline, but that does not mean that those players have given up on the season. There's still a lot of guys fighting for jobs, and you cannot overlook a single one of those, because you never know what the butterfly effect is going to bring into reality.
You're 100%, Mike, because there's no pressure on them. They're just going out, they're playing, they're having fun. Runs like that earn coaches extensions, get players contract extensions that the next year don't look as good as they did in March and April when a team wasn't in the picture, because they were playing with no pressure against teams maybe having a letdown game or looking ahead to the next night against a team they're battling with. But I remember that Buddy Robinson goal now, Mike. That was drama, and that was like one of the games of the year in the NHL that season in terms of, implications and what it meant to the next chapter.
And that ended what was a 16-year playoff drought for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Florida gets in. They eventually lose to the finals, in the finals to Vegas. But Adrian, and I think we're going to get to this in the mailbag a little bit, but we a lot of times as sports fans, we talk about like progressions, right? Like at first you lose big, and then you lose close, and then you win close, and then you win big, right? But a lot of teams that win Stanley Cups have to go through the throes of losing and painful, crushing defeats in the playoffs. And Florida had to go through that. They got all the way to the finals and lost to the Vegas Golden Knights, but they took that experience and parlayed it into back-to-back Cup wins the next couple of years. So beware of those teams that seem like they're out of it late. But on paper, yes, Utah should have some great opportunities to pick up points. And I feel like from being around this team this year, Adrian, a lot more than last year, I feel like this a lot more this year than I did last year. I really feel like this team gets up for almost every game. Whereas last year, I think there were some games where maybe you don't get up as much. Maybe, okay, it's the Blackhawks late in the season. We should win. Let's just go out there because we should win. I think there's a lot more urgency in those games where on paper you have an advantage. On paper, people expect you to win. But those players know that there are 20 NHL dudes in that other locker room that are fully capable of winning the game themselves. And I haven't felt those letdowns in areas where you could expect there to be natural letdowns.
We haven't had a San Jose game from October 28th last year, up 4-1 in the third period.
Well, Carolina. I mean,
Carolina, but San Jose at that point hadn't won a game in 9,
Carolina's
right?
the cup contender, yeah.
Yeah, the couple Seattle games last year, Mike, the Mammoth were ahead. They just couldn't put away. I wouldn't say that there was really any clunkers last year against teams that you should beat. It was games you couldn't put away when you had a lead late. So definitely want to keep our heads on swivels for those contests. The 3 in less than 2 weeks against Chicago coming up to start.
Yeah. Well, that's your back to school. So hope everybody is bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for Wednesday, tomorrow, against the Colorado Avalanche back at the Delta Center. Excited to see everybody. AD, you want to get to our Tuesday mailbag here?
Yeah, let's get back to the mailbag, Mike. It's been a little bit. The mailbox is you know what it's like when you come back from a vacation and the mailbox is full and the mailman's trying to jam more and more penny saver ads and stuff like that in there. So we're going to help out the mailman when we come back right after this on Mammoth Daily.
Looks like the mail's here. Time for the Mammoth Mailbag.
Welcome into your Tuesday mailbag. And before we crack that first letter, want to mention once again the Ultimate Fan Sweepstakes. You need to enter before March 1st. This is a drawing to win tickets to watch the Mammoth take on the LA Kings coming up on March 28th in LA at Crypto.com Arena. The grand prize includes flights from Salt Lake City. You get 2 hotel rooms for 2 nights, $200 per diem per person, Mammoth jerseys and swag, game tickets for you and 3 guests. So this is a trip for 4. It's our biggest Mammoth giveaway yet. And again, that's UtahMammothYouth.com. Is that right, Adrian? I get that right?
Yep, just scroll down to the bottom of the page. And Mike, I'll throw something else in for the sweepstakes winner. Open invitation to come on Mammoth Daily and talk about it after.
Whoa, okay, so this just went from like the biggest Mammoth giveaway yet to the greatest Mammoth giveaway yet, because you can kick me or Adrian off the show for a couple minutes and hear about the experience. Again, it's a great arena. It's a really cool atmosphere down there in Los Angeles, and the Kings are pushing for the playoffs and for the Stanley Cup after trading for Artemi Panarin a couple weeks ago. So that'll be a ton of fun on March 28th. Be sure to enter before March 1st. Again, that's UtahMammothYouth.com. But AD, what do we have first here on today's mailbag?
Mike, you can send us a mailbag question, and it doesn't have to be for us. You can address it to somebody else, like Ian Cole, for instance. Here's a question that comes in from Brett. He says, it'd be pretty cool to hear from Ian Cole, and not just on a post-game interview. He's so savvy with the media, but it'd be great to hear about his travels. 2 specific questions. He has been paired with a lot of defensemen over his career. Is there someone that he's really enjoyed playing with the most? And what has he thought about his move to Utah? He's been in a lot of cities. He's seen a lot. And he says it's a lot of tough questions to ask because it's his current team, but what makes Utah special over the places that he's played? He seems like a good person to talk to about his time in the league. I think so, Mike. I went right up to Ian on Saturday, right after practice, and I said, hey, Ian, guess what? I've got some good questions for you today. because they come from our Tuesday mailbag. And he said, all right, what do you got? So let's start with the question about D-men, D partners that he's had over the years. Here's Ian Cole in the locker room on Saturday.
I've had a lot of great D partners, guys that I've really learned a lot from when I was younger, for sure. And two guys I think of that immediately come to mind are Eric Brewer and Barrett Jackman. They were great for me. They helped me out a lot. And kind of as I went along here, had great partners all over. Played with Eric Chernak in Tampa all year, and that was a great partnership. Learned a lot from him, and we played really well together. And then, here playing with Des has been great, and countless others along the way. But played with Justin Schultz for a couple of years, won a couple of cups with him. That was great. So yeah, listen, it's been a great run with a lot of great D partners, and it's probably too many to name, to be honest. But it's been fun.
That's fantastic. Yeah, but Barrett Jackman, going back to his St. Louis days, one of the first names he met. I bumped into Barrett Jackman, which is the perfect last name for the guy, by the way. If you've ever seen him, he's in the St. Louis area, and I snuck back into like the St. Louis Blues alumni locker room one time when we were in St. Louis, and they have this locker room. It's just for like Blues alumni, and guys can go there. Get ready for a skate or whatever. They have a ton of Blues alumni that are still in the area. Barrett Jackman walks past me, and I'm just glad I didn't bump into him because I would have broken something. The guy is built like a statue and super friendly, super nice. But he was one of a couple guys that were milling around in there, and it was cool to see the alumni room and all their memorabilia and just a really special space that hopefully Utah one day can have. But what else we got on Cole, AD? Did you finish the interview?
Yeah, here's the answer to what's it like being in Utah.
Yeah, Utah's been amazing. It's a very comfortable place to be, right? It's a fantastic place to live. The people here are amazing. It's the most genuinely nicest people. Having the mountains right there is such a treat. Obviously, we don't get to enjoy them as much as maybe some other people do in terms of like the winter sports, skiing, snowboarding, and all that. But being able to get there and have them very within reach is great. So I can't say enough great things about Utah as a whole and Salt Lake City specifically. Just how we've been treated, how we've been accepted, how we've been, welcome to this area has been fantastic.
Love it. He's been asked about that a few different stops, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But great to hear from Ian. Great question, Brett.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. And as always, folks, send in your mailbag questions and address them to specific players, coaches, management. We'll take it right to them here on our Tuesday mailbag. All right, Mike, here is my homework assignment
here we
from
go.
the Olympic break. It comes to us from Jay Clar's 44. First question, by the way, is what happens to the hats thrown on the ice for the hat trick, and we'll get you a good answer for this. It's going to be charity driven. It's going to be community driven, and maybe something fun involving our Utah Mammoth Ice Center in terms of one hat or hats from hat tricks. But the homework assignment: how did the standings get created the way they did? He says, nothing bothers me more than seeing a game hand out 3 standings points to division rivals when other games only hand out 2 standings points. He's talking about game goes to overtime, game goes to a shootout, right? You're sharing points. One team gets 2, one team gets 1. He says, I feel all games should hand out the same amount of standings points. He says, my proposal that you didn't ask for: 3 points for regulation, 2 points for an overtime win, 1 point for an overtime loss, 0 points for regulation loss. the impact of such a point system would change little, but what it does change is significant. He says, I bet Adrian could show us the impact of such a change. I'd be happy to.
Why did he think that you were the math guy on here?
He might have, come over to section 6-7, looked over my shoulder and saw all the spreadsheets. And Mike, during the games, I've got piles and piles and piles. And do I even open up? Do I even look through any of them? Not usually. But
Jay Clark, I'm a little offended. I'm a little offended at your lack of your lack of belief in my ability.
You could have taken this directly to an engineer.
4 years at the Harvard of the Midwest, and Jay Clark is going to Adrian for math, who we've already proven on this show is a liability in that department. But that's me trying to make this question about myself. You did the homework. You might have turned it in late, but you have it apparently. So what do we have? How would it affect the standings?
Do you know what, Mike? It would not affect any playoff positioning. In the Western Conference, Minnesota and Dallas would swap spots, second and third in the Central. And below the wild card line, you'd have some movement. Nashville would go right below the line. LA would drop below San Jose, but nothing really significant. One thing it would do, though, Mike, is it would give Utah a bigger cushion in their first wild card. It would essentially give Utah a 3-game lead or a 9-point lead in the wild card for the first spot. Right now, they've got a 4-point lead with 2-point games and 2 points for a win over LA. So with 3 points for a win, you'd see Utah actually have a 9-point lead over the Nashville Predators. So that might be the biggest impact in the entire NHL is the cushion that Utah would have for the wild card. Over in the Eastern Conference, Mike, you have Buffalo going from second. Montreal going from second in the Atlantic down to the second wild card, and you have Buffalo going from the first wild card to second in the Atlantic, while Boston goes from the second wild card to the first wild card. But again, no playoff spots exchange in for out in terms of in the playoffs with 3 points for a win versus out of the playoffs. But fun exercise.
Interesting. I am a little surprised there's not more movement. Now, Utah is in a pretty good space if that was the case, because the Mammoth have a bunch of regulation wins. Looks like they're top 10 in the league in regulation wins, which are obviously more heavily weighted in this system. And that's the way it was in the Olympics, by the way. 3 points for a regulation win, 2 for shootout or overtime win, and so on. The one thing that we can't calculate is the way that change in scoring system would affect end of game scenarios, because now maybe there's a few shifts at the end of the game where a team who's struggling might be like, oh, just get the game to overtime. Like, let's just get there.
Yeah.
Where now there's a lot more incentive to win the game in regulation compared to winning the game in overtime. And there's now not a 1-point separation between losing in overtime and winning in overtime. There's a 2-point separation between winning in regulation and losing in overtime. So lot more it would change end of games a little bit, I would think. Impossible to know how that would play out in the NHL, at least in today's game. But another element, another kind of fold to that system, which I'm fine with. I like rewarding regulation wins more than overtime wins. I think that's good. Regulation wins are the first tiebreaker in the standings, so that's they are still important. You just don't get any more points, obviously, than the OT win.
Mike, one other note in this, and it doesn't change a whole lot, but it does show how close Utah would be to leading the Pacific Division Right now, they enter the second half of the season post-Olympic break 4 points in back of the division leaders, Vegas, who leads the Pacific Division, but they're in the Central, so it doesn't matter. But with this 3-point system, they would be just 1 point behind Vegas if they were in the Pacific Division to leading the Pacific Division. So,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
we'll get
that's-
to. We'll get to more on the standings coming up here as we roll on in the Tuesday mailbag.
Love it.
All right. Let's take our weekly question on the trade deadline here. This is fun. Jordan checks in. He says, great to see you two at practice yesterday. He says they're looking good. Cooley's looking ready. 2 medals coming back to the Mammoth locker room. That's a win. Here's his mailbag question. He says, going into the final stretch, is there anything that we're missing that we need before the trade deadline? And also a question that creates some more homework for us, which is great. When will the team store have Tusky stuffed animals? We're on it, Jordan. But we'll get to the areas where we're experts first, and that is
They should just get
Mike.
the stuffed animals that they handed out to the silver medalists. I'm sure Team Canada's not in any mood to hold on to those. Why do they do that? Do we know?
I assume that they're the Olympic mascots, right?
They are, but
yeah.
why? Like Connor McDavid just had a crushing defeat, and he's being handed.
Why can't they give them the stuffed animals when they check into the Olympic Village like 2.5 weeks ago as part of a welcome packet?
I that'd be fine. Or do we need stuffed animals at all? Like, let's just give them to the team store. It looks ridiculous. You know,
it was awkward when Nathan McKinnon. It was awkward. It was not a good time, Mike. A lot of stuff happens, and it's just not a good time. That wasn't a good time.
If you lose a gold medal game in overtime, you're allowed to rip the head off the stuffed animal that you're given when you get the silver medal. That's my rule. But Jordan, it was good to see you at the practice facility. This was funny. Jordan and his family they just showed up to the practice facility, wanted to see what it was like because they knew it was open now. They didn't even know the Mammoth were practicing. They're like, "Oh, this is great." So just kind of showed up, and boom, you're at NHL.
That's the whole idea for having the Utah Mammoth Ice Center for folks to drop by when they're in the neighborhood.
Right. What do you think, AD? We got the trade deadline coming up on March 6th. So we'll have played 4 or 5 games by that point. I think 5. Look at my schedule here. 1, 2, 5. 5 games by then. So 5 games between now and the trade deadline. The trade window, or I don't know what you'd call it, but the trade ban, the trade blockade ended basically right after the gold medal game the other day. So trades are now in play here in the NHL. It was couldn't trade during the Olympics, but now you can. We've talked about this a few times. Just getting Cooley and Kerfoot back, that's 2 acquisitions right there that are going to feel like trade deadline acquisitions. So I'm hesitant to even put anything on the wish list until we see those guys back in the lineup.
Yeah, that's it for me, Mike. This is a look in of, okay, here's our full lineup. Is anything glaring right now? And you look at those two guys coming back. You look at the D, John Marino having a career year offensively, a 3-point night going into the Olympic break, right? That's an acquisition in itself, really, on the right shot of your D side right there. So I think what it comes down to, Mike, is Bill's going to be taking every call. He's going to be talking to everybody. And if something comes along that clicks, right? Something happens and clicks, right? Let's say you're driving down the road. You're like, oh, that's a nice car. I want that, right? something like that to me. Well, what's the cost for that nice car? Is that feasible? But I think if something comes along that can help the team regardless of where it goes into the lineup, and the payout is feasible, that doesn't sacrifice anything bigger picture, you're going to make a move. Whether that's a D, whether that's a third or fourth line forward, if it comes along and it makes sense, you're going to add it regardless of what you're shopping for, if you're shopping for anything specific.
Yeah, and you know, I could see another puck moving D, but gosh, like you look at the guys you brought in with Marino via trade and Schmidt in free agency. Those guys have been so good, right? As that second pair, quote unquote, Dursey and Sergachev. That's your number one group, and I think here's the thing too. Like nobody, like you said, you take every call. You look down every road, right? Nobody's untouchable. Everything is on the table until it's not. And we keep hearing Utah's name, not in specific trade talks, but just we hear Utah's name from NHL reporters that, they're looking to make a big swing. Gosh, I mean, who do you make a big swing on? And here's the other thing too. Who's selling, right? Who's selling? Because there's so many teams. You look at the standings. There's so many teams that think they're in it right now in the NHL. And you know, I'm looking at the Eastern Conference right now. The Rangers, they've signaled that they're out, right? Like they've signaled that they're rebuilding. The Devils are near the bottom. You know, Panthers, they've been linked to some trade rumors here that they could be dishing some pieces. Sergei Bobrovsky's name came up the other day. I thought that was pretty interesting. The Flyers are also near the bottom too of the Eastern Conference. Philly, Florida, New Jersey, and New York. In the Western Conference, we know that Vancouver has been selling assets. What can you get for some of those St. Louis pieces, right? We keep hearing Jordan Kyrou's name for St. Louis, but it sounds like from the reports that we see on the outside, it sounds like the asking price is ridiculous and no teams are willing to make that jump. So I just it's a seller's market right now where if you do have an asset, you can get a good return for it because there's more buyers than sellers right now at the deadline. Now that can change dramatically in just a week or two. But I think that has to be taken into account as well. Just looking at the Mammoth stockpile of assets, Utah is set up really well. You look at the draft picks next few years. Mammoth have all their first round picks. They've got 3 second round picks next year, 2 third round picks next year, and the next couple of seasons or next couple of drafts, they've got a bunch of picks in the middle rounds as well, a bunch of extra picks. So that's a lot of assets, a lot of future assets to trade away. And you think of the Mammoth championship window, not just the playoff window, championship window. It's going to be coming up in the next few years. It's probably not here yet, but you still want to have some of those assets to use, not just for the trade deadline, but also for the offseason and free agency potentially. But on the flip side of that, you also have to think that a lot of these draft picks, there's not even going to be room for them with the big club. You only have so many contracts to give out. And it's good to have a loaded pipeline when you're a rebuilding team. But when you're a team that's in the playoffs constantly, a lot of times there's not room for those prospects to rise to the NHL level. So what do? You trade them for more NHL ready, more polished pieces. But that's kind of a long answer of nothing, Adrian. Like, what do we need?
That's because we're reality, Mike. Like we're looking at it from a standpoint of how Bill Armstrong's looking at it, right? Not as a fantasy hockey owner
Yeah.
looking at it, right? So, keep the questions coming in. Hit us up on the Tuesday mailbag. Let's fly through one more, and it comes to us from Brett. He says, we're at 64 points, one extra than the 63 I wanted Utah to be at the Olympic break. He says, Utah's entering their quote-unquote playoff window, not their quote-unquote Stanley Cup window.
There you go.
Utah fans need to know there's difference. So if you're rallying the troops over the next 25 games, what are you telling the boys? They've hit each of their goals. Playoffs are in sight. We have 2 medal winners on the team. What do they need to finish strong? Mike, do you know what? I look at this first wildcard spot as a huge opportunity. The Pacific Division right now, we just mentioned it. You're 5 points in back of the team, 4 points in back of the team leading the Pacific in Vegas. That would be your first round matchup if the playoffs started today. Edmonton's 4 points back. Seattle's 5 points back. Anaheim's tied for that third spot, currently in the second wildcard spot. But there's a difference in the Central with 3 of the top teams in the NHL and Colorado, Minnesota, Dallas, and the Pacific Division, who's kind of gone back and forth. Vegas, all of those wins past regulation. 20 of their 27 wins in regulation, only about 70% of their wins. They've won a lot in overtime. 14 games they've lost past regulation. I've been looking at that. I think that's a fun matchup potentially. If you stay in that first wildcard spot to play a Pacific Division team who at this point is going to have a record that's pretty close to yours. It's not going to be, we just made the playoffs for the 8 seed, the second wild card, playing Colorado.
No.
You can look at the matchup and say, it's a little closer than we thought, maybe making the playoffs the first time with the team we're playing.
I guess I look at Vegas a little differently. I look at glass half full with them, and I see all their overtime losses, and I think, well, they could easily have 6 or 7 more wins if they just make a play in overtime. They've lost a ton of games beyond regulation, so I look at it was like, okay, they could have 6 or 7 more points and be more established.
And
go ahead.
The other thing is Vegas has all that playoff experience, so that's another thing that you go into that first round series with.
To be honest with you, I don't feel much better about Vegas than I do about Colorado. And that might sound crazy, but the Mammoth have played the Avalanche very well, dating back to last year. Either they've won or they've lost by a goal, basically, is what every matchup has been. I think it's a terrible matchup for pretty much everybody in the NHL, but I think with the aggressive style that Colorado plays, I think with Utah's team speed, it's a better matchup for Utah than it is for a lot of other teams. So, man, once you get into the dance, you have a chance. Like, you're talking to a guy who has watched his team lose in March Madness to lower seeds all the time. My beloved Purdue Boilermakers. Last time we'll mention them on this pod. But look at teams. Look at look at the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs the last few years. Last year, Florida was the 3rd seed in the Atlantic, and they go to the Cup Finals and win. 2023, we mentioned that a little bit ago. They were the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, and they go all the way to the finals. 2021, during COVID, Montreal got to the finals as the 4th seed in like that weird North Division, but they were a huge underdog. 2019, Columbus up against the President's Trophy Tampa Bay Lightning, the record-setting Tampa Bay Lightning, and Columbus swept them in 4 games. Like, if you have a seat at the table and a chip, you have a chance. And like that's why the messages just get to the playoffs. And it's not just to have a chance to win the cup, which you do have, or at least to do some damage. It's also to further your development as an organization. A lot of those teams I mentioned, and even some more that I didn't mention, but look at teams who have won cups recently. Florida, Tampa Bay, Vegas, Colorado, Washington. Like what do all of these cup winners have in common? They all experienced tremendous heartbreak in the years leading up to their victories. Like Tampa got reverse swept by the last team in the playoffs. And then the next year went on to win the cup, right? But they had to go through those lows to reach the highs. Florida lost in the cup finals, then won the cup. Vegas got to the cup finals their first year, then kept losing in the playoffs, then eventually won their cup in 23. Colorado had early exits. Washington had early exits year after year. People thought Ovechkin was never going to get a cup, and finally they break through in 2018. So you have to, coming up short in the playoffs is just part of all of these cup-winning teams' journeys. It's part of it. And so I see it as two things. I don't know what you say to the boys, Brett. I don't know what the message in the room is. I think everybody has the same goal, but this is not just like we're happy to be here as a wild card team in the playoffs, no matter who Utah plays. No, like if you have a seat at the table, you got a chance. And then even if you don't make it to the finals or you don't win the cup or what have you, losing in the playoffs is so often one of the earlier rungs of the ladder to climbing up and winning a Stanley Cup.
Win the day, get in, go win that first day, and take it from there.
Yeah, and Karel Vejmelka in playoff game,
yeah, and not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but
yeah.
These playoff games, folks, are going to be 1-goal games in the third period. Like it's going to be so much fun. There we go, Mike. Tuesday mailbag. My answer to Brett: win the day. Just win the day. Win every day and take it from there. Be in the moment.
Wrapping up the Tuesday mailbag, let's get on to our third period and send you on your way for the rest of your Tuesday. That's coming up next right here on Mammoth Daily.
This is Mammoth Daily.
Still have some work to do here on our Tuesday edition of Mammoth Daily. Adrian, you've been calling it Training Camp 2.0, and that's exactly what it is. Big reason why we have a bunch of guys up from Tucson. They've been in and out, just kind of showing what they can do with the big club. They get a little bit of that NHL pay if they're on those two-way contracts as well, which all of them are. So it's been good to see those guys. They've added some energy to practices as well. And you made a point in our show notes about the kid line, as we called it, reuniting with Logan Cooley, Dylan Guenther, and JJ Peterka taking rushes and practicing together. So some intrigue in camp. AD, what do you think of the Tucson guys coming up? And then we'll get to the kid line as well.
Yeah, it's just awesome to have that opportunity, right? You started practice last Tuesday, right? The team was back. They've been back for a week already, but we had 4 guys in the Olympics in Oli Mata, Clayton Keller, JJ Peterka, Karel Vejmelka. So the Mammoth called up Daniil Boot, Ben McCartney, Dmitry Simashev, Maverick Lamoureux, and Matt Villalta right out of the gate to fill those spots. And as you said, guys are on two-way contracts. So they get one salary in the AHL and they get one salary in the NHL, which is significantly larger. You can tell in your paycheck when you get it at the end of the 2 weeks. 4 days in the NHL. That is not too bad, but it's a great reward for those guys, Mike, to be able to come up and practice and get that paycheck. And then they swapped a couple of them out over the weekend. Kevin Connaughton and Scott Perunovich came up, and then Maxi Zuber came up. Ben McCartney stayed the whole time. And for Benny, that's a testament. That's a reward to the season that he's had with the Roadrunners. Is their alternate captain, but we've watched him play. He's a tenacious forward.
Yeah. He's
got 21 goals already, leads the team in scoring, and it's a nice reward for McCartney, who was a 7th round pick in 2020, started playing pro as a 19-year-old. He's 25, but he's a heart and soul guy, and to have him up here for a full week. Him and Connaughton and Zuber were sent down yesterday, but it's great for McCartney to be rewarded, to get that recognition, to get that paycheck, and really for all of those guys who work hard and you'd love to call them up. And Mike, in a different era, Bill called guys up late in the season, gave them an NHL game, gave them their NHL debut as a reward. We're just not in the position here, fighting for a playoff spot, fighting for playoff positioning, that you want to change the lineup. It's winning, you're in, and you go from there. And we're not looking at guys and evaluating guys in the NHL. So this is just a really nice way to do it. And Bill and his team, John Ferguson, David Ludwig, have always been so good to their prospects and giving them opportunity and giving them chances like this to just show the appreciation and show that everything they're doing down in the minor leagues. And I'll tell you this, Mike, we've been there and we talk about being in the minor leagues. It's still a great life.
100%.
It is a great life. They are paid well. The meals and the facilities that are in Tucson that the Mammoth have upgraded, and the catering at the Tucson arena that the players get breakfast, lunch, and dinner at is as good as I've had in an arena. And it's a great life, and it's fun. But coming up here, Mike, as we know, it's a different life.
Yeah.
So happy to see all those guys, whether they're prospects, kids, or veterans like Pernovich and Connaughton, get that chance.
We've also had Daniil Boot down in Tucson, getting some more games, some more opportunity there with the Roadrunners in the AHL. Played, I think, one game before the Olympic break, or before the AHL All-Star break, and then a couple games after the last few days. He's got a goal and an assist through his last 3 games in his most recent send down to Tucson. So just some more action for Daniil Boot. Hopefully try and get him some confidence. We do expect to see him, I think, back at some point. Now, the Utah lineup is more competitive now with guys back from injury, but you'd think that you'd want Boot around as one of those extra forwards or be in a lineup. He was scratched one of those games before we cut to break. So we'll see how these games play out for Daniil Boot in Tucson, see if he continues to produce at the point per game pace in the AHL that he was on earlier in the season when he was first called up. Just before we cut out here on a Tuesday, AD, we should touch on practice a little bit and just some odds and ends from practice. I know you wanted to get to the depth of the having multiple centers and how that's going to affect this team, but seeing Cooley, Gunther, and Peterka together, we saw them as a line earlier in the year, outscored the opposition 12-7 at 5-on-5 when they were together. They were together for pretty much all of Utah's 7-game win streak earlier in October. And interesting to see that group placed back together. Adrian, not terribly surprising. We know head coach Andre Cherney likes his pairs up front, and he's got Gunther and Cooley as a pair, and it's not hard to slot in JJ Peterka, a guy who's been scoring goals this year.
Yeah, and JJ, as the years gone on, I think it's just it's showed up in the stats, but as you watch the games and talk to him, is continued to grow and become a integral part of that locker room more and more each day, still in his first year. So to get Cooley back and Gunther was really strong. We talked about all the guys at the top of the show. You could list everybody on the team as well as they were playing going into that Olympic break. Everybody was playing some really good hockey.
Yeah. You want to talk about the centers, or did you have some notes there?
Yeah, I just think you go from 4 centers to 6. Guy gets kicked out of a faceoff circle, you pop in another center, right? And in tight 1-goal games, like every little thing that happens in the game, face-offs, block shots, hits, like every little thing is so huge when games are decided by a goal and games are going past regulation and getting games to when you're trailing to find a way to get that point and play for the second. I think that's huge. I can't think of really any other NHL team that would have 6 out of their 12 players that they can pop into the face-off dot and have a natural center taking the draw.
I'm I really felt, Adrian, and this is not coming from anybody with the team. This is my own speculation, but I felt like when Cooley was out of the lineup, when Kerfoot was out of the lineup, and there were times when the Mammoths struggled. And even when they were in the lineup, there were times when the Mammoths struggled. But especially when they were out, I felt like there were times when Bear had to move the lines around up front, had to shuffle some things up. And to me, the sense I got was that there were a few times when Bear would shuffle the lines, and there was one new line combo that they really liked, and there was another line combo that they weren't as sure about. Almost like, hey, on paper, we feel good about this one, but at the expense of another line here. We know that Bear likes his pairs. You think of the pairs that have stayed together through this year. Keller and Schmaltz is an obvious one. Also, Jack McBain and Michael Carcone. Been extremely effective for Utah. And then Gunther and Cooley is the other one. And it's interesting, Adrian, that once they split up, Gunther's numbers actually improved. And look, I think most people would benefit from having Logan Cooley on their line. But it did feel like maybe they were trying to make too many plays. Or when 92 had the puck, he was looking for 11. And when 11 had the puck, he was looking for 92. But once they split up, Gunther's numbers got better. And not just when they split up, but even when Cooley was out of the lineup, Gunther elevated his play. There have been 28 games without Logan Cooley. Gunther's played in 26 games without Logan Cooley. In those games, Dylan Gunther has 25 points in 26 games. Okay? So almost a point per game. With Cooley in the lineup, Gunther has 22 points in 29 games. So still very good numbers. It's not a huge drop-off. But he has more points in less games without Cooley. I think that's Gunther elevating his play. I don't think that's because Cooley's holding him back or anything ridiculous like that. But it is interesting to see Gunther's numbers and production when he was away from Cooley. Again, we've seen them be electric together, but there were times when that combination I thought maybe was trying to do too much when they were together on the ice.
Yeah. So in both two young players still, right? Still learning and adjusting. And the more the better. So great to get Cooley back out there. Can't believe it's been 28 games that the Mammoth have been without him. And they're in the first,
like more.
Yeah. And they're the first wild card spot. And when guys are injured, Mike, you just don't see them around the Mammoth Ice Center. They come in early for their treatment. They're not in the locker room because they're involved in their other stuff. They're skating when the team's doing meetings and stuff, so they're not around the team. They're not on the road at the early stages of it. So it's hard on the player and hard on the guys to not have the guy in that stallmate next to them right there where they're used to, not even looking over, just talking.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to finish my point, I didn't really bring it around, I guess, because we were talking about the centers and how Bear likes his pairs. He likes, two forwards that play really well together, and then you can kind of chuck a guy in there who can bring something to the line, and Cooley and Gunther are that pair, and then Peterka's kind of that extra guy that you can play with them, and we saw good things from that group earlier in the year. But with the multiple centers, I feel like it gives you so much more flexibility where now if you need to shuffle the lines, you can shuffle them and you feel good about one new line combo, and then you still feel pretty good about another one. Whereas before, maybe you could put one together and you didn't feel as confident about the other. But it is interesting that every time Andre Tourigny has shuffled the lines up, it seems to have paid immediate dividends. But it'll be fun to watch. It'll be fun to watch the new groups get to work tomorrow against Colorado. It'll be a great test, and we'll see everybody there at the Delta Center. Anything to wrap up, AD?
Coming up on a Wednesday, an Odd Man Rush edition. Special guest will be with us. I think we got number 6, John Marino. Mike, gonna stop by for some 2-on-1 chatter with us. So always love catching up with Johnny. President of Hockey Operations, Chris Armstrong, will be with us coming up in the Odd Man Rush as well. So looking forward to having him. So you never want to miss a Wednesday edition of Mammoth Daily, because it looks like John Marino tomorrow and Chris Armstrong coming up next week.
That's the plan. We always try to bring you guys the best. Fun to talk with John, and good to hear from Chris as well, talking about the new practice facility. And we've heard a lot about that, but the opening of the practice facility and the direction of the team a little bit. So some great conversations coming your way here on Mammoth Daily. As always, be sure to drop a comment. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know anybody else you want to hear from on Odd Man Rush or an expert show. We've got plenty of great guests lined up for you guys, but always want to know more of who you guys want to hear from. So appreciate everybody, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on that Wednesday Odd Man Rush with John Marino. Thanks, everybody.